The first thing Kellan noticed when he stepped off the ramp of the shuttle was the smell. It wasn't bad, just unexpected. A sharp, coppery scent that hovered in the air like a memory trying to resurface. He wrinkled his nose and glanced at the towering structure ahead, an alien research facility made of glimmering green-black stone and pulsing bands of soft light. It looked like someone had brazed a cathedral in seaweed. A voice echoed from above. "You are the human specialist," it asked, from a speaker mounted to an overhead arch. Pierce cleared his throat, adjusted the strap of his duffel bag, and nodded. "Kellan, genetics and cellular biology." "I was told you needed help with cloning." A round, blue figure stepped forward from behind the arch. It had 4 arms, each ending in a trio of delicate, translucent fingers. Its eyes blinked vertically. "I am Drassic, lead bioarchitect of this quadrant." "You were not our first choice." "Charming," Pierce muttered. Drassic turned, gesturing for him to follow. "We requested a Nobel laureate." "We received you. I did lead the artificial limb regrowth project on Europa base. You also maintain a rating of 73% on your interstellar peer review profile." "73's solid," Pierce said, dodging a low-hanging pipe as they entered the structure. "That's a B-. We do not operate on letters of the alphabet," Drassic replied. They passed through a corridor filled with strange, humming pods. Pierce watched one pod crack open briefly, revealing a mass of twitching flesh and a single yellow eye. It blinked once before the shell closed again. "Is that failure number 522, Drassic said. "Come, the subject awaits." They reached a chamber that looked like a surgical theater crossed with a greenhouse. Bioluminescent vines ran across the ceiling. In the center of the room floated a containment sphere, inside of which was a creature Pierce had only seen once before, in a blurry image from a decades-old Earth transmission. It was long, with a serpentine body and 6 legs. Its hide shimmered with iridescence, and 2 long fronds extended from its head, twitching every few seconds. Pierce stepped forward, awe blooming in his chest. "That's a Kirellan Skycrawler." "Yes, but they're extinct. Earth hasn't seen one in over 70 years. Yet we preserved tissue samples before the last one perished in a lunar zoo. We have attempted to clone it for 29 planetary cycles. All attempts have failed." Pierce squinted at the floating creature. "That doesn't look like a failure." Drassic's upper left hand motioned toward a second containment unit on the far side of the room. Inside was a mass of quivering muscle with 3 mismatched eyes and a tail that spasmed at irregular intervals. "That is the clone." Pierce blinked. "Well, that's not ideal," Drassic nodded. "We have replicated the genetic sequence with 99.9% fidelity, yet the result always deforms. It either dies in the first 3 hours or mutates beyond recognition." Pierce moved closer to the data screen beside the sphere. "What's your replication protocol?" Drassic projected a diagram mid-air. "We use tissue excitation followed by chromosomal recoding via quantum entanglement. Then we pressurize the cellular matrix and pulse it into mitotic expansion." Pierce stared at the process, mouth slightly open. "You're brute forcing mitosis with quantum pulses?" "Yes." "Why? It is how we clone," Drassic said, slightly confused. "How else would one do it?" Pierce rubbed his temples. "You're skipping the basic stages of cell preparation. There's no cytoplasmic partitioning, no telophase, no spindle fiber formation. You're trying to rewrite the final chapter without reading the first 10 pages. Drassic's lower eyes narrowed. "You suggest an alternative." "A basic one," Pierce said. "Let me show you." Drassic hesitated, then gestured to a workstation. "Proceed." Over the next 4 hours, Pierce worked with the preserved Skycrawler tissues. He asked for a basic nutrient solution, a temperature-controlled growth chamber, and a set of sterile pipettes. The aliens watched in silence as he isolated a single viable cell, placed it in a dish, and began the slow, painstaking process of encouraging mitosis the old-fashioned way. He checked the microscope and frowned. "The cytoplasm's sluggish," he muttered. "We can accelerate it," Drassic offered. "No. Let it happen naturally. If this is going to work, we need to rebuild the original environmental conditions." What was the Skycrawler's homeworld like? High-altitude forests, constant mist, Temperature ranged between 14 and 24 degrees Celsius. Gravity slightly below Earth standard. Pierce nodded. We'll need a microhabitat. Can you simulate that? Easily. With Drassic's help, they constructed a small chamber that mimicked the Skycrawler's native environment. Pierce transferred the dividing cells into the chamber and watched as the process continued. After 12 Earth hours, the first multicellular cluster formed. Drassic observed it silently, then turned to Pierce. It is still alive. Pierce winced as he sat down. Yeah. That's usually the goal. You used no exotic tools, no quantum pulses, no matrix pressure. Just good old-fashioned cell division. Drassic tilted his head. You are resourceful, Pierce grinned. That's the nicest thing you've said to me. Over the next few days, the cell cluster grew. It developed into a small embryo, wriggling faintly in the fluid. Drassic and several other alien scientists watched Pierce's progress with fascination, occasionally offering suggestions or asking questions. Pierce answered when he could, but much of his time was spent monitoring the delicate process of development. On the 5th day, something went wrong. The chamber's temperature began to spike. Alarms blared. Pierce rushed to the controls, heart hammering. What happened? He shouted. A power surge in the climate regulator, Drassic said. Unrelated to your experiment. Unrelated or not, we're cooking it alive. Pierce grabbed a thermal insulator from the wall, ripped open the chamber, and plunged his arm into the hot fluid. Pain lanced up his forearm, but he ignored it, pulling the embryo free and cradling it in the insulator. His skin blistered instantly. Get me a cryo pad, he yelled. Drassic ran to a nearby storage unit and pulled out a flat disc, slapping it onto the table. Pierce set the embryo down, then collapsed against the wall, panting. One of the other aliens approached, examining his arm. You are injured. No kidding, Pierce gasped. Is the embryo? Drassic peered at the cryo pad display. Stable, you saved it, Pierce groaned. Good. Because I'm about to pass out. He did. When he woke, his arm was wrapped in a cooling gel and secured in a sling. The pain throbbed through his shoulder. Drassic stood nearby. You suffered second-degree burns. Your epidermis is regenerating. Estimated recovery time, 10 Earth days. Pierce tried to sit up. The embryo, developing steadily. Your process continues to succeed. Pierce exhaled and let his head fall back against the pillow. Keep monitoring it, no shortcuts. Drassic nodded. Despite the setback, the embryo matured. Within 2 weeks, it had grown to the size of a cat. Its fronds twitched in response to stimuli, and it responded to light and temperature changes. The aliens called it Subject 9, but Pierce started calling it Sky. On the 23rd day, Sky opened its eyes. Drassic watched it with something close to reverence. It recognizes you. Pierce, arm still healing, reached out slowly. Sky nuzzled his palm. You used basic methods, Drassic said, yet succeeded where we failed for decades. Sometimes you don't need to reinvent the wheel, Pierce said. You just need to remember how it rolls. Drassic folded his arms behind his back. We wish to attempt another. 2 Skycrawlers may offer a chance to re-establish the species. Pierce nodded. We can start another culture. I'll supervise. You are acceptable, Drassic said. Pierce laughed. High praise. He didn't notice Sky curl around his leg, already beginning to purr. By the 30th day, Pierce had stopped trying to understand the alien calendar system. The local rotation was erratic, something to do with the planet's axial wobble and a moon that didn't orbit so much as loiter. So he stuck with Earth time, sectioning the lab days into manageable blocks: sleep, monitor, feed, log, repeat. The alien researchers didn't seem to sleep at all, choosing instead to cycle in and out of the observation deck in brief, humming clusters like drones swapping tasks at a hive. He was spooning a protein slurry into a feeding port when the glass behind him chirped open. 3 new figures entered. One was Drassic. The other 2 were unfamiliar: a lean, emerald-skinned creature with no visible joints, and a squat one with a domed head and a mouth that split vertically. Drassic gestured toward them. This is Vec and Lantry. They have been assigned to assist. Pierce didn't look up from the feeding station. Can they handle temperature calibration without melting the sensors? Vec's voice sounded like someone flipping brittle pages. I taught material fatigue analysis at the Varnax Institute for 4 decades. Great. Pierce said. Then you should be able to keep the nutrient chamber under 70 degrees without frying the protein bonds. I do not appreciate your tone, Vec replied. I don't appreciate having to grow prehistoric reptiles in a sauna, Pierce said, standing and wiping his hands on a towel. Let's call it even. Lantry blinked with a wet clicking sound. Shall we begin the second gestation sequence? We will, Pierce said, stepping toward the storage vault. But we're not using the same tissue sample. I isolated a secondary culture last week. It's cleaner, less mitochondrial drift, might reduce the risk of spontaneous limb duplication. Drassic's top right eye twitched. You did not log this. I was busy not letting Sky die, Pierce said. I'll update the logs now. He keyed in the new sample set, then moved to the incubator. It was a large, egg-shaped pod with a translucent shell and a gently pulsing interior. He slid the culture tray into the chamber and sealed it. Lantry leaned closer and made a soft warbling sound. If this yields a viable result, reproduction may be scalable. That's the plan, Pierce said, but one step at a time. Let's get through the next 72 hours without any power spikes, rogue mold colonies, or spontaneous nerve clustering. Drassic tapped a control panel, and the chamber lights dimmed slightly. We have rerouted the lab's power grid through an isolated conduit. No further surges will occur. Good, Pierce said, because if I have to fish another embryo out of boiling soup, I'm billing hazard pay. Your compensation is already above standard, Drassic said. I meant emotional hazard, Pierce said. That's extra. Vec began scanning the chamber with a long, wand-like sensor. Atmospheric ionization is within range. Of course it is, Pierce said. We're not guessing anymore. Lantry made a sound that might have been amusement. You are more confident than your professional ranking suggests. Confidence isn't the issue, Pierce said. It's patience. You all want results yesterday, but biology doesn't care about your timeline. Vec straightened. We do not operate on impatience, we operate on urgency. The Skycrawler may hold immunogenic keys to resolving a plague on the outer moons. Pierce froze. What plague? Drassic turned slightly. It was deemed irrelevant to your task. I'm growing a species from scratch, Pierce said. If there's a secondary agenda, I need to know. The pathogen is not transmissible to humans, Vec added. That's not the point, Pierce said. If you're planning to use Sky's offspring for bioharvesting or viral testing, I need complete transparency. Lantry shifted its weight. We will not harm the creatures, but their genetic lattice has dormant antiviral sequences. We believe it was part of their evolutionary defense. Pierce rubbed the back of his neck. They were supposed to be pollinators. Multipurpose organisms often evolve cross-functional traits, Drassic said. Still would have been nice to know, Pierce muttered. Over the next 2 days, the second embryo matured faster than the first. Pierce had added a nutrient enhancer derived from a fungal protein found in Europa's ice caves, and it seemed to stabilize the early cell walls without accelerating division too quickly. Sky, meanwhile, had grown large enough to require a separate enclosure. She chirped when he entered the room, pressing her fronds to the glass. She reacts to your voice, Lantry noted. She reacts to familiarity, Pierce said. She's not a pet. She associates your presence with survival. I just need her to stay healthy, Pierce said. On the 40th day, the second embryo hatched. It was smaller than Sky had been, but more mobile. Its limbs unfolded with surprising coordination, and it began exploring its enclosure within minutes. Pierce observed quietly, noting the symmetry and coloration. Drassic stood beside him. You have succeeded again. Pierce didn't respond. He was watching the way the new creature nudged at the walls, then turned and let out a series of soft clicks. It's calling, he said finally. Instinctual behavior. It thinks it has a sibling nearby. Drassic gestured toward Sky's enclosure. Shall we allow them to interact? Not yet, Pierce said. We need to make sure neither carries a viral load. Full virology sweep first. We have already scanned their fluids, Drassic said. Then scan again. We're not rushing this. Drassic hesitated, then nodded. As you wish. By the next morning, the new Skycrawler Pierce had started calling it Echo was chirping in rhythmic pulses, mimicking the hum of the lab's ventilation system. Vec found it unsettling. It is attempting to harmonize with the environment, he said. That implies a degree of cognitive mapping. Of course it does, Pierce said. They had spatial memory, probably used echolocation in dense fog. Lantry tilted its domed head. We had not predicted that level of neural development this early. You didn't predict a lot of things, Pierce said, typing notes into his terminal. That's the problem with cloning extinct animals. You can bring them back, but you can't predict how they'll behave without a species memory. Vec narrowed his eyes. What is species memory? Learned behavior passed down through culture, not genetics, Pierce said. Sky and Echo don't have parents, no flock, no migration pattern, they're blanks. Everything they do, they're figuring out on their own. Drassic tapped a nearby display, pulling up a waveform of Echo's chirps. They are not entirely isolated, they have each other. Maybe, Pierce said. Assuming they bond. We can simulate flock behavior using sound loops. Pierce shook his head. You can't fake family, they either connect or they don't. That evening, when the lab lights dimmed for the artificial night cycle, Pierce stayed behind. He set up a two-way mirror between the enclosures and watched as Sky approached first, pressing her fronds to the glass. Echo responded with a low trill, then mimicked the gesture. Pierce didn't move. He just watched, heart-thudding. After several minutes, both creatures curled up near the barrier, fronds twitching in near synchrony. He allowed himself a long breath. Then he walked to the comm panel and tapped it. Drassic. Yes, they're ready. The barrier opened, slow and silent. Sky and Echo met in the center. There was a moment of hesitation, then Sky dipped her head and Echo nestled against her flank. Drassic observed from the upper platform. They are forming a bond. No simulations, Pierce said. No scripting, just instinct. Lantry made a low, thoughtful hum. Then perhaps we should stop treating them as specimens. They never were, Pierce said. You just didn't notice. He sat down, exhausted but alert, as the two Skycrawlers curled beside each other and began to chirp in unison, their tones rising and falling in unfamiliar but unmistakably deliberate rhythm. It wasn't music, not exactly, but it was close. By the 52nd day, the lab smelled faintly of damp moss and hot plastic. The climate regulators had settled into a steady rhythm, and the once erratic biofield fluctuations had evened out to a gentle pulse that reminded Pierce of a slow heartbeat. He adjusted the cuff on his elbow brace and leaned over the analysis table, where Sky was currently stretched across a thermal mat, one eye half-lidded and the other tracking his movements. Echo sat nearby, tail curled, humming a low, oscillating tone that reverberated through the floor panels. Still think they're just genetically programmed behaviors? Pierce asked without looking up. Drassic stood to his left, arms folded behind his elongated back. No, I believe now they are improvising. Good. Because Sky just turned off the nutrient valve by herself an hour ago, Pierce said, tapping a control screen. I caught her using her fronds to trigger the failsafe override. She didn't like the last batch. She rejected the formula. She disabled it, Pierce said. Then waited by the panel until I brought her the original mix. Drassic blinked all four eyes in slow sequence. We did not anticipate preference. You didn't anticipate intelligence, Pierce said, but Sky's adapting to stimulus changes faster than any of your projections. Echo's not far behind. Lantry entered the room, balancing a tray of sealed vials on a magnetic pad. It hovered next to him, humming faintly. We've finished the virology scans, Lantry said. Neither subject carries any transmittable pathogens. The antiviral lattice is intact. Pierce took one of the vials and held it to the light. The liquid inside shimmered a dull gold like melted coin. This from Sky's lymph, third extraction, taken after she consumed the new protein variant, Lantry said. The antiviral marker spiked, which means her immune response is still evolving, Pierce muttered. She's not static. She is becoming more than a replica, Drassic said. She is adapting beyond her template. Pierce nodded. That's what makes this work. Replication isn't just copying. It's survival in motion. Sky stretched, clicking twice in rapid succession. Echo responded with a pinging trill, then they both turned toward the lab's main viewport and watched the swirling green clouds beyond it. Have you told the Outer Moon Council? Pierce asked. About the antiviral potential. Lantry's dome pulsed a faint violet. They are aware, but they remain skeptical of the results. Then they can come see for themselves, Pierce said. But I'm not handing over blood samples until I know exactly what they plan to do with them. Drassic stepped closer to the containment chamber. You believe they will exploit the creatures. I think they'll treat them like spare parts. We would not permit dissection, Drassic said. No, but you'd allow extractions. Controlled environments, monitored stress tests. I've seen what happens when a species is reduced to a pharmaceutical. Lantry regarded him silently, then turned to the viewport. We will not allow that. You can't promise that, Pierce said, but I can. He crossed the room to the observation terminal and keyed in a series of commands. The overhead lights dimmed, and a soft hum filled the lab as the environmental controls shifted slightly. The Skycrawlers didn't react with alarm. Instead, they moved in slow arcs across the enclosure, Sky curling her body around Echo's as both settled into the new temperature gradient with unhurried grace. Pierce gestured to the screen. That response, that's not instinct, that's learned trust. They know the space changes, but they've stopped treating it as a threat. They have accepted the lab as a habitat, Drassic said. No, Pierce said. They've accepted me. He walked over to the storage rack and pulled out a thin, flexible scanner. Holding it against his forearm, he ran a basic vascular check. The burns had healed into pale pink bands, the skin still tight but no longer raw. You're still monitoring your own vitals, Lantry said. Part of the job, Pierce said. If I'm stressed, they react. If I'm calm, they relax. Biofeedback loops go both ways. Then they are imprinting on emotional states, Drassic said. They're not machines, Pierce said. They're social, responsive, and they remember. Echo mimicked a sound pattern from 3 days ago. Sky refused a food sample she'd associated with nausea. That's memory. Drassic eyed the creatures. They are beautiful. I think that's the first time you've said anything like that. I did not understand them before, Drassic said. Now I am beginning to. Pierce registered a faint tone from the side console. The secondary virology panel flashed green. Looks like the antiviral proteins are stable in ambient conditions now, he said. We could synthesize a serum from trace extractions. No need to breach tissue. Lantry's dome brightened. You can do that, if you give me a clean lab and no interference, Pierce said. But I'll need Sky and Echo to stay exactly where they are. Agreed, Drassic said. We will authorize a secondary lab bay. Make sure it's quiet, Pierce added. They don't react well to sudden mechanical noise. 2 days later, the serum synthesis was complete. The golden liquid maintained stability across temperature trials, and the antiviral protein held structure after exposure to simulated moon pathogens. Pierce double-checked every data point before presenting the results. You'll get your cure, he said, but you're not getting them. Drassic placed the authorization report on the data pad. We have submitted the samples for approval. The Skycrawlers will remain here. Under your supervision, Lantry rotated slowly, and the Council, they will receive the synthesized compound, Drassic said. Nothing else, Pierce exhaled. Then we're done here. Sky chirped gently from her mat. Echo padded over and pressed his fronds to the glass, eyes blinking in slow, deliberate rhythm. You two did all the hard work, Pierce said softly. I just helped you find the right pace. Later that evening, after the lights dimmed and the corridors fell silent, Pierce sat alone in the observation alcove. The lab was quiet, the air cool and still. Sky and Echo slept in a coiled heap, their breathing synchronized, faint pulses of color rippling along their flanks in a slow, nocturnal pattern. Drassic stepped into the alcove but didn't speak. They stood side by side for several minutes without a word. Eventually, Pierce broke the silence. You were wrong about me. I was, Drassic said. You were not our first choice, but you were the right one. Pierce didn't respond. He just watched the creatures breathe. Drassic turned to leave, then paused. What will you do now? Pierce didn't look away. Stay. As long as they need me. Drassic nodded once and departed. The door whispered shut behind him. In the stillness, Sky shifted slightly, her fronds brushing Echo's side. Both settled again. Pierce leaned back, closed his eyes, and let his breathing match theirs.